Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Recording in progress.
Oh,
You like that?
oh, yeah. What's up, girl? That was extremely seductive. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm just letting you know the recording's in progress. But
right.
Tim Bunao, welcome to the podcast. It's funny. So looking back on it, I didn't realize that you hadn't been on here before. And I could have swore, like I looked back because you were going to be one of the first guests back at TAC, and then something happened with. Remember when I first started the podcast in 2018? You were there with Greg.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. We'll start off with that one. But yeah. I think I was supposed to go on after Greg, but that was when we had a rogue windstorm. That windstorm came through and it blew that tent over. Like me and Brandon and myself, we had to grab the tent. They had to save your guys' life. You know, Greg was over there doing the knife hands. You know, cutting the tent up. But yeah, I forget what happened after that. But
yeah,
I know. That was a good time.
I know. And then I've been out hunting with you a couple different times, and we're like, yeah, we got to do a podcast. And then you went back to work or whatever, and we never were at the truck to be able to do it. But anyways. That's all to be said. Thanks for coming on. I've had you on the list here for years, and I'm glad it's finally worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. How many years have you been doing this now?
It'll be five in July. Yeah,
I'm glad you're still going 5 years strong, and got on there.
Yeah. There's a couple people still listening, so that's helpful.
It's always good.
Yeah. But no, so I've just, for me to give a quick little background before I have you give an intro. So I think I met you at that Total Archery Challenge event, or maybe the year before that even. Or no, Train to Hunt. That's when I met you. Train to Hunt in 2017. You had completely kicked my ass in the Train to Hunt event. And I was like, who is this guy that can shoot, can run, do all this stuff? And I didn't really I don't think we really talked much there, but then I actually met you at the TAC event, and we've stayed in touch and talked and become buddies over the last 5 or 6 years, whatever it's been, which is kind of crazy to think it's been that long. But yeah, so that's kind of my background on meeting you and everything there. But yeah, so what about From what do you remember from that time frame when you were doing like the Train to Hunts and everything?
You mean like as far as like meeting you, or just like the Train to Hunt?
Mostly Train to Hunts in general.
So I did the year before. When you came out, did you have to? We didn't do the 100-pound pack, did we?
No.
Yeah, they're killing people with the 100-pound packs. So they got rid of it. Yeah, it was like the year before. I had done it, and I realized that I was completely doing everything wrong as far as, your training for it or whatever. So yeah, in the 2017, leading up to that, I changed things around. That 2015, the whole entire reason for me even getting into it was I was taking my first out of state elk hunt to Colorado with my buddy Dylan. So that was kind of like my motive, to do that. And then, I met Ray, basically that whole entire group that you met, that 2017 year, met all those guys. So then it was kind of like, hey, we're doing it again, and, there's like, this guy's doing it again. This guy's doing it again. It's kind of like almost a little fan, like, damn right, I'll be there, and I think, was Greg at that one too that we were at?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Greg was at that one.
Yeah. Greg and Rick.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I forgot about that.
8.6 on the Richter scale, as Greg calls them.
Yeah,
but
those are good times. That was the only one. I think that was the only one I did was that year, if I remember right. And it was that was an eye opener for me. I just yeah, just doing all of that under high heart rate and all of it. It was fun though. Like I thought it was a really cool event to get to do, and I don't think it's very healthy as far as like doing the pack runs with the heavy weight on there. Definitely not good for your body for sure, but it definitely made it interesting to watch.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I don't know if it was like rainy that year, but the year before when we had to do the 100-pound pack, it had rained like the night before. So that like 2 mile run with 100 pounds on your back was just treacherous. I think I had some like ill proper fitting backpack. I was like a horn hunter. Actually, I bought it from Corey Jacobson. I got on Elk 101 because obviously going into Colorado, uh, I got an Elk 101 and someone had a pack for sale and it was a horn hunter. I had no idea about them. And I'm like, hey, I'm interested in it. And, traded emails and this, that, with some Corey Jacobson guy. And, I got it. And then it was kind of like all of a sudden, like something happened or I realized that the creator of Elk 101, his name is Corey Jacobson. And I was like, oh, I just bought it from this creator of it. Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he's a 10-time world champ, world elk calling champion and everything. I'm like, huh, small, like interesting, but yeah, that backpack was not meant for 100 pounds running. I think when I came across the finish line, all the buckles had come like completely undone. So I was running at like a 90-degree angle. I could have like just been crawling on all fours, but yeah, it was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's not good for the body.
No, not at all. Well, let's go into a little bit of your background and kind of so right now you currently live in Montana, but you're not from Montana. So I want to start with kind of your background, where you grew up, kind of how you got into hunting, and then a little bit about like also a different sport that we were both involved in. But I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah. So I don't think I've actually ever really. So I've done like a couple of podcasts, but I don't think I've ever actually said this. But I was actually born in PA. I'm a PA boy.
That's why I like you.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. I was actually born in Bradford County, PA, and yeah, I grew up there I didn't leave there until. Well, let me go back. I was born in PA. I got into hunting. We were 12 when we could hunt in PA.
Yeah,
small
12.
game. So I think my father took me out like a year or two before that just for a squirrel hunt. I didn't really know much about it, or I wasn't really, I wasn't around it quite a bit. And he took me for a squirrel hunt. And I also, that year, I started that summer, my mother was working, my parents aren't together. My mother would go to work and I would go to a farm. And the guy's name was Duncan. We get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We would milk the cows, and then after the chores are done, he let us loose. And when we got to an age where that he trusted us, which back then, a bunch of kids running around a farm with 22s, we started shooting woodchucks. And then 12 years old, I got my license, and then it was basically kind of on from there. Every summer. And then the fall, I had to spend as much time with them as possibly could. Small game hunting, just it was myself, another kid named Johnny, and then his brother Paul, and we were just like inseparable. It was like every weekend, as soon as chores were done, I was go to the grandma's house, unlock the gun safe. Everybody grabbed a shotgun, or a 20. One person grabbed a 22, the other person grabbed a shotgun, and it was just us. They own. I think I looked at it a while ago. They own like 80 or 900 acres up there.
Wow.
So it was just us. It is right next to a huge state, forest too. But it was just us on this property, and we would just run a rampant. I don't think we ever paid attention to a bag limit as far as your rabbits and your grouse at first. We were that young, but so yeah, I started that way. Shot my first deer with Duncan. It was a deer drive. I had a single New England single shot 223 with like a Tasco scope. I shot the doe, and we gutted her out, and then it was basically like, hey, now you have to do the work. You have to drag this thing back. So on the hillside, it was actually frozen, this frozen creek bed. So I thought it would be a good idea to try to ride the deer like a sled. Oh, that didn't work out. I slipped, fell, landed on the gun. The scope snapped in half, and that was like that was like my first deer hunting escapade kind of a deal. Then I and then from there it was kind of basically a lot of small game hunting, and I didn't turkey hunt. I got really into turkey hunting up until what was that? I think it was freshman. I think it was my sophomore year. That's when I moved to New York to my father, and that's when I kind of I didn't necessarily like stop hunting. I still hunted around there quite a bit, but it became kind of backseat to another sport that I got into at that time frame. When I went there, small little town in the middle of nowhere. Never thought that this would be the thing to do in this town, but BMX. So, all these guys were, they're riding their bikes to school, or they had bikes in their back, their vehicles. And, it's a small town, what's everybody doing? They come to find out, all these guys after school were going down by the creek and they were building trails. And I don't know how many trails that we built over the course of 3 years, but we build trails. We get, 6 or 7 doubles and a couple lines, and then someone would find out that we're back there and then bulldoze it. And then we find another spot, we would, dig along the creek, or the river or something like that and bulldoze it, and that was kind of, that took, up front and center for me was riding bikes for, a long time, which I kind of ended up riding for like 13 years.
Well, it's funny you say that because I haven't talked about it on the I don't think I've ever talked about it on the podcast, but that was like a huge thing for me growing up. Like from the time I was like, I don't know, 10 years old, maybe even younger, through into high school a little bit was BMX, and it brings me back memories when you're talking about building these trails. So we had this area that was, looking back, like I get why it was wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Private land that was down by the river, that good soil that you could build trails. And we go back to railroad tracks. We'd ride our bikes back there, and we just build this mecca of jumps and doubles and lines and all this stuff. And usually what it came down for us was someone they kind of knew we'd be back there, but like kind of just leave us alone until someone would get hurt pretty bad. Yep. And then it was like bulldoze. And then it would be like a year or two of nothing. And then all of a sudden someone would get, a shovel, and we'd head back there again and start building all over again. And you'd find like pieces of like what things were before, berms and all this stuff, and then rebuild it and like just get into it. And like there was like, especially during the summers when we'd be off, like I'd ride from where my parents' house was to town and then over to the spot, which was like 4 or 5 miles. And I'd ride down every morning and then ride back in the evening for dinner. Like I was on my bike all the time. It was just like nonstop. That's what all my buddies did. And I think that was like a huge part of my, I guess, upbringing. And I actually used to, like, that's where I got into filming. Like I had a little handy cam and I had a wide angle lens on it, and I made films, and I actually have a DVD that's called BMX for Life. And like, was just like, I was like, I'm never going to stop doing this. Well, then you start getting hurt a bunch and realizing that like to go to another level and continue to like be better at the sport, that my level of risk tolerance, I hit the max at that. And then I was like driving and everything else. And I'm like, you know what? Driving in a vehicle is kind of cool. Like, and I just eventually kind of, went away from it. But I was in like the skate parks and would travel all over, go to Ohio, all those different places. What was the big one in Ohio? There's a couple of them.
Changa.
So, not Changa. So I know. Not Rays, and there's one other one that was in Columbus, I believe.
Oh,
the something.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man, I can't.
It's got
Not
a
that,
huge step up.
yes, yes. Not that it's really that important, but it was like
Yeah,
that was like I remember going there. It was like the world, like and I just that was a huge part of my life. And you took it to another level. Like when I saw some videos and stuff of you really got into it there.
yeah, I didn't care. I didn't have any regards for my body whatsoever. So I was a full on sender. But let me bring it back to this. How much of the BMX built you, um, or ingrained into you about hard work for something that you enjoy doing? I don't think people understand and how much time, commitment, and loads of dirt that we used to shovel just to enjoy, to have fun. Like we had to work in order to do something, and that's just something that people don't want to do. So
Yeah.
like now I always see that as like, putting in those hours. Sometimes you didn't even ride. Sometimes you just went down there and dig, and those jumps took days upon days to build these lines and stuff. And I kind of look back at that sometimes, and I'm like, you know what, like that really formed, some hard work ethic, into myself.
Oh, 100%. Like I think that is what I learned about like with BMX was whether it was the riding or the building, it was like it took a little you had to do something little almost like every day, so to speak. Not always, you couldn't always ride every day, but like it was just continual building blocks, and then you got better. Or like, okay, the more shovels of dirt that I put, the more fun I'm gonna have. Like it was
Right.
like it taught you delayed gratification. And then like, or like me riding continuously to try to get better, and then all of a sudden things that were hard or scary to me all of a sudden became easier, and then I had like a new level to grow. And I look at that
Yep.
the same with hunting, and whether it's whitetails and okay, the discipline to go out there and scout all the time so that you can have success when it comes down to the season, or when it comes to like doing elk hunts or any sort of adventure hunts. It was like, you start, when I first went out there, I could barely make it 3 days in the wilderness where I felt like, I was falling apart. And then, last year going 21 days and spending in there and hunting, and you just build from, years and years of doing something and hard work into it. Like, I feel like that definitely taught me a lot of that. And it sounds like the same for you.
Yeah, and and then the aspect of wanting to be successful at something, a handrail, dude. I've killed myself on handrails and gaps and things like that. But like, you're tumbling down 20 stairs with a 25-pound bike rolling on top of you with the pegs, and you're like banging on concrete, and you get up and you do it again, and you keep going until your body finally gives up. And that's just something that the dedication to want to, but once you land, like all your buddies are there, and it's just like, just a huge, everybody's just hooting and hollering, it's high fives and hugs all the way around. Yeah, it's a good camaraderie. And then the whole entire just the pushing each other, and then it's just you against yourself a lot of times.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of parallels there, and I think so. Like, I know you were into it. I know I've talked to Kurt Geyer, the working class bow hunter. He was big into BMX, and there's a few of us in the hunting space that, or just like that, like to hunt a lot now that we're
Retirement.
into BMX. Yeah, that's a retirement gig.
Yeah.
A little easier on the body.
Yep. I mean, like, a lot of the stuff too, like, the camping, what we do for hunting wise now. I remember, we worked crap jobs, just so we had the time off, but we would drive, 12 hours to a skate park and sleep in the parking lot of a Walmart, just to go ride, and stuff like that. And a lot of times too, we were doing these road trips on $20. Like I had my buddies from Kentucky were just here, a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this one. Two of them went to Detroit with $20 in their pocket, and they were going around grabbing beer cans and all sorts of stuff from parties, because at Detroit or Michigan there it was like 10 cents a can for recycling. So they were getting extra money by doing that stuff. But they were, we would try to do anything possible to make these trips work, just to go experience a new city, and all that kind of you know, doing whatever we could do to, enjoy what we love doing, pretty much.
Yeah, and yeah, how much does that relate to like hunting? And that's why I always say, like, no matter what trip or what do you want to do, you can figure out how to make it work.
You
It's
can.
just like it's sometimes it's easier than others, and but like, and that all comes back to the whole buy tags not gear thing. Like, tags, you're not
Yep.
getting away from doing that, and I'm a big proponent, I know you are too, of good gear. But like, it's like when it comes down to it, if you only have money for one or the other, I'm buying the tags, and
Yeah.
and we're gonna make that experience happen. Like, that's 100% the route to go, in my opinion. And I think, like, yeah, that was taught a lot, because like I remember when I was like in latter years of BMX, like I was working in an auto garage for $5 an hour cash, and I just like I remember it'd be like I'd like want like a bike part, like I'd have like some of that would go to like a new set of forks or whatever that I
Right.
wanted to have, and then the other part was like, okay, I want to go here to this skate park and do this, and it'd be like, okay, say you had $20. Well, that was like 5 slushies at Sheets, and then I'd just scrounge food for the rest of it. That's
Yep.
about it. But you made do with what you had, and I think that's that it's yeah, definitely some correlation there.
Yeah. When I left, so after I graduated, I left to, I did a little, I did think I did a year in college, and then I left, I moved to Louisville, Kentucky to basically go ride with a group down there, a clothing company out of Louisville, Shit Luck Clothing. And yeah, I mean, so for 7 years, I lived in Kentucky, and that's all it was. That's what life was, about. It would work, go ride, go film. And, it was that was a different time back then as well. We had the skate park, but, we would do um, road trips, and a lot of times some of the better guys, they would all go to, like, to Europe, or to Germany and stuff like that. But the whole entire filming aspect of it, and for 7 years, that was, pretty much, you know my life. And we, like you said, we made do of what we could, just to have the fun there.
Yeah. And so when did that transition to like getting really back into hunting again?
So I had a buddy. We had a group come up from Alabama, and this guy Barlow. He's like, "Hey, want to go down to the Ohio? Let's do some catfishing." Sure. So at this point in time, I don't think I'd touched anything to do outdoor related for like 10 years. And so we go down to Ohio, it's the Falls of Ohio there. It's like right in the city, right between Louisville and Jeffersonville. Dirty ass water. And the river level is pretty low, so it's this big crease. And we got there, we stopped, and he had one of those big gill nets. So he caught some bait, and we cut him up. He had a, I don't know, $15 Zebco, from like Walmart. And he handed me that thing, I put this cut bait on. First cast, I hooked into a 60-pound blue, and I landed it right. First cast, and that was just like that. I think I was 33 at the time, and because I know this because that trip was the first time I had done a double kinked rail, and I remember saying, 33 years old, double kinker, what's up? Kind of a deal. Like, I'm always riding around with a bunch of younger people, and a couple of them, they weren't doing it, or they didn't want to do that rail. But yeah, I caught that catfish, and it was just like that. I think within 6 months from there, I packed up everything. I actually shipped it back in a box with most of my stuff, and the bike company FBM, they're doing a tour called the Gypsy Tour, and there was like, I don't know, like 8 teams, and they were basically going around to skate park, and I got invited onto it. So it was a little over 800 miles, but for 800 miles back to New York, going to skate park. 5 of us rode in the back of a U-Haul. It's a big open U-Haul. And, a lot of us smoke. So like, there's no ventilation back there. We're just smoking and drinking in the back of a U-Haul, going to skate park, and made it all the way back to New York. And I had to go back for one more load, and then I came back. And yeah, so I got back in January. And then, no, it was just before January, but I had gotten some money for my birthday in February, and I bought a PSC Brood X. So my whole entire goal was, I remembered how much I love turkey hunting. I love, talking to them. I went out that season. I whiffed on one with a bow, and that kind of got the ball rolling a little bit more. That first fall season back into it, I kind of didn't really know what the heck I was doing. Going back to growing up, I barely didn't really do a lot and know a lot. It was more or less just like, well, I've always seen deer here, and my best buck to date, I got lucky. I watched a Real True video. They rattled this buck in. I went out to the garage. I cut off an old pair of horns off the garage, and I made a little rattling thing, and yeah, this buck came charging in. I mean, just like looking for a fight. I made a shit shot. It ricocheted off a limb and caught him behind the ear, and it fractured his skull. And but yeah, so that year, I had started bow hunting again. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of just like seeing deer. I was basically doing observation sits without knowing what I was doing. And that's when I had an encounter, which I ended up dubbing white oak. So this deer popped out at 35 yards, hit a scrape, and clear shot all day long. Probably one of the largest deer that I've seen in New York, and I didn't shoot because I was not comfortable shooting at 35 yards. That's the only time I ever saw him. Never saw him again. Don't know if anybody ever shot him, but that right there again sparked another huge fuse. That was. What was that? That was like 2012. So from there, I never wanted to miss an opportunity like that again. So my shooting got better. I upgraded a bow to a PSC DNA, and my shooting got more, more focused on that. And then I kind of found the beast, or my buddy Dylan, he kind of tracked me to the beast, and so I started becoming a student on there. Following that kind of stuff, and my scouting, basically I lived in the woods, every chance I had, I was in the woods scouting different pieces and this and that. So yeah, that kind of just escalated from there. And then it was also like, I've always wanted to elk hunt. So, Dylan and I made the plan, for 2 years. So this would be in 2013. At 2015, we would go to Colorado. So we started saving the money, getting in shape, doing research and all this and that. And we took off to Colorado. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. I think day one, my GPS failed, and we only had the GPS. I don't think we had Onyx yet. So we were kind of limited to, luckily we had a big paper map. We weren't very proficient with a compass. So it was a lot of landmarks, this and that. And then it was kind of like, dusk, we need to get heading back kind of deal. Ended up having cows at 25 yards with a bull, trailing them. And problem is the cows got to him before the bull got to me. I should have just cracked that doe or the cow.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was a huge learning experience, and that was where the whole entire train to hunt came into play. I wanted to make sure I was physically fit for it. I found Cam Haynes and the whole entire mindset and motivational that he does give. That's where a lot of that came into play.
Okay, so you weren't like really into the fitness aspect your whole life.
No, I mean, up until I was like 34, I smoked cigs from like 18 to like I was in the 30s.
Really?
Yeah. I was, a pack a day, if not, especially in Kentucky. Um, uh,
Dang.
it was a we have the camel ferries, and they'd come around at the bar, and they'd give you a little ticket, and you go up to the bar and pay $1 for a pack of cigarettes, and like had smoked and drank all the time. That's pretty much what if I wasn't riding, that's what I was doing, that and chasing women. So yeah, and,
God.
and it wasn't until uh, getting ready to go to Colorado, that's when I started putting the fitness aspect first, and that's I stopped smoking and everything
Well,
like that.
isn't that crazy? Like, and I always thought that it kind of sounded dramatic when I'd say like how elk hunting had changed my life or like my direction on things, but and it is like it can like because it is a very difficult endeavor, and like you need to be it helps to be in good shape to be able to do that and everything, and like and I had always worked out and I always liked doing that and everything, but like it really gave me discipline on a whole nother level, and because I wanted that success so bad, and I think, and again, like it just turned a light switch on for me, as it sounds like it did for you, because I would have never guessed that that you had smoked for all those years or anything. Like I just, I've known you from the time period that you've been in really good shape and just always been that way. So that's what I, had seen and always seen your work ethic. But it sounds like, like you've had this work ethic, but it was like directed in different ways at different periods of your life. And now
Absolutely.
it's probably on the healthier front.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, this is the first beer I've had since that first week of February. All my buddies are up here. I pretty much have cut, drinking out of my system. But yeah, I mean, so that Colorado trip was, like you said, the elk hunting was a huge eye opener. So we came back from Colorado. We went out there September 17th. New York doesn't open up until October 1st. And yeah, I still had Dick's Sporting Goods, Hunter Hang On, as like the comfort zone. I had one of those with the sticks, and I laugh. A few weeks ago or a month ago or two, you posted a picture, that huge stick set up and looking around. You were not happy about it one bit. You can tell in the photo, and I remember doing that. And that year, after Colorado, we came back, and obviously, right into deer season in New York. My normal spots were cake. So I started, scouting some of the more difficult accesses, and I started like being like, you know what, like we just doubled that in Colorado. Like I can get up this thing, like started doing that more and more. So that just one that kept me in shape, and two, that I started realizing a lot of things. Like I'm really cutting the distance out of people. I'm not seeing anybody back here. I'm not seeing sign back here. And then, the cameras, I started putting them back there, and I started seeing a higher quality of deer. So, that getting in shape for Colorado led to a whole nother phase of my, the whitetail hunting in New York. And that season, I ended up arrowing my second best deer. That was a 45-minute sit that I busted my ass up the side of the hill to get to this little flat, this little bench, and got set up. 45 minutes later, the buck came through, trailing a doe. And if I wasn't in that kind of shape, I don't know if I would have gone that route. I think I would have gone to a quicker access. But I mean, I'm like, you know what? I can get halfway up that hill real quick. So a lot, that elk hunting, like you said, it really did. It triggered a whole different aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I've hunted the big woods and that kind of stuff forever, but like when I started elk hunting, one, it just gave me a different perspective too on like, this is cool. Like I always thought I was at a detriment. Like everybody had better opportunities than me. I'd look at like the Midwest and what I'd see, and I'm like, man, they got it so much better than me. I got shit woods I can't see very many deer in, that type of deal. And then it just kind of like opened up to me like, no, this is this is an adventure style, and like you just got to work for it, and you got to put and cover the miles, and not all the spots have to be way back in, but it definitely opened up my eyes to more opportunities, because like when you're out in Colorado, everything's steep. everything's big, and like covering that ground. Once you do that for 7 days, you come back and you look at the Appalachian Mountains in a lot of places, and you're like, man, I can go back in there. Like, that's not a big deal, or I can do that. And it gives you that confidence to go and explore places you may never have done in the past. Or even like, that's when I started doing some backpack whitetail hunts and like just making it fun, like changing things up to just whatever was fun to me to do. And from when I first met you, you were doing that kind of stuff a lot too, and in New York and PA, and getting to see that. So like, I don't know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like my last 3 years there in New York, I chased this deer, which again I never would have found if I hadn't decided to go up and over, which was actually the short way, but it was also the steepest route. You had to go through a swamp, cross a creek, and then it's just straight up. I think it's like 600 feet of elevation, but going that direction, you couldn't really get to it other than doing this huge long loop. But then doing that way, your wind, your primary wind is just blowing right over everything. So going up and over, I started going up in there, and I had gotten a trail camera photo at 2016 of this deer, and then I spent 3 years trying to figure him out on that hillside. And my third year, it's funny, Greg, I just posted a photo. I'm like, spent 3 years in these woods. I miss it. I miss chasing that deer. And Greg's like, yeah, spent 3 years and gave up and moved to Montana. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting chase for those 3 years. He wasn't your traditional deer. He actually bedded on the windward side. The windward side was just loaded with white oaks. So pinpointing a food source was impossible because the whole entire hillside would drop. It was just more or less waiting for that, that bright wind that he did eventually bed on the opposite side, and had him at 15 yards, but it was too dark. And then like 2 weeks later, I had him at, I think, 20 some yards. It was too dark. He did not move from his bed. That first time I saw him, I literally heard the coughing. And I was like, is that a deer cough? Like, I never really heard about it. I think that's what a deer cough would sound like if that was a deer cough. And then, like, it was like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes later, all of a sudden, you can hear the rustle of the leaves, and I kind of keep glassing down that area. Then all of a sudden, he popped out, and he just stood there for like 30 minutes. Just stood there, just surveying, not doing anything. He might take a step and might eat a little leaf, but just stayed there. Got a little darker, time's ticking. Finally, he started breaking, but it was at that time where I'm like, he gets into, it was October 2nd. He gets to this point where it's just thick, leaf cover, but he's down in the bottom of underneath all these leaves, from the treetops, and it's just a big black hole. By the time he's going through, I could see from up top, but he's down, low. I just couldn't see him, but he just walked right through my shooting lane. He'd waited until it was dark enough to make the move. It was amazing to see, to actually get that close, and then to see a deer like that, just, I'm not moving. I'm staying right here. He didn't get that big for, no reason.
Yeah, they operate at such a different level, and like, it's very rare that you can get an opportunity like that where you can watch them and actually see their mannerisms, and like, it's amazing. Like, as a human, like, we let our guard down all the time so much. Deer don't. Like, it's very rare, unless it's a rut and they get all crazed and horned up there. But other than that, like, early October in the big woods like that, they're just not. And an old deer, their first instinct is survival, and that's a perfect example of that.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know whatever happened to him. Like I gave up and moved to Montana, but but yeah, I don't know whatever happened to him. But yeah, I mean, it was a constant, it was the typical cat and mouse chase, and he won. He definitely got the best of me. But man, that one particular deer, I hear it quite often. How people say, there's that one deer that taught you, a lot of lessons throughout the, that either that single season or, through multiple seasons. And, I definitely know a lot of mistakes I made every year. I've always been that type of person too. Like I like to write, or I go over mentally, at the end of the season, what did I do wrong there? Go back through and um, especially when I was back home, in New York, I used to keep, a hunt journal. So after every hunt, I'd write down, deer saw, this and that, and then at the end of the season, I would go back and reflect on those dates and like, you know what, that probably wasn't the best move to go there. Like why did I decide to do that? Like that was an idiot move. Too aggressive when you shouldn't be aggressive, or you're not aggressive when you should be aggressive. So,
Oh, yeah, and it's nice when you review those notes because it takes the emotion out of it. Like when you're in the season and you're going through it, I feel like we make a lot of decisions based off the emotional state that we're in. You know what I mean? Like you get either down or you get like you might read sign that's like super like just like jumps out. You're like, I need to do this, and you might get too excited and maybe jump in at it before you should have. You're like, I think I'll be okay with this wind, when in the back of your head that it's probably not the right time to do that. And man, when I reflect on those things, there's so many times that I've screwed that up, either not being aggressive enough or too aggressive. And I think reviewing those notes are just is super helpful. And I know you're really detailed in that, and I'm big on note taking and reflecting on all of that stuff, because you learn so much going back on it. Like my dad's got stacks of notebooks from over the years of just like every hunt he's on, he does the same thing, writes it down, and being able to go back through it, and it's pretty wild.
You should publish his books for everybody to see.
I think I'm going to. I'm going to steal them and I'm going to publish them and make a bunch of money off them, and then probably lose. He probably disowned me as a son. But
oh yeah, you're done. Yeah,
100%.
But I mean, like, keeping those notes. How many times have you used those notes where it's taking you 2 or 3 years to fine tune an area because what looks good on paper, the wind isn't that. Or like, so you try it one way and you're like, oh, this is never going to work again. So I can't hunt this spot on that wind. Well, let's try on a more variable wind, or, this and that. So having those notes, it really helps fine tuning specific areas that or might be, a killer spot, but it just is going to take some screw ups to get to know how to do that, in that specific area. But once you learn that little spot, you're like, when you see a train feature elsewhere, you like, I bet you that's probably what this case is, and you're almost in the ball game right out the gate.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it just takes a lot of screwing up and a lot of doing that to really know. And man, it's like it takes me a while to learn an area, like it just really does, because everyone's got their little finicky things that are different than another spot. Like I was actually, before we started recording here, I was over my dad's house kind of reviewing. We were looking at some maps, and I was talking about an area that I've eyed up for years and wanting to get into and kind of explaining. We were looking at access and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, it'd probably take me about 3 years before I ever kill a deer in there if I put the effort into it, but it's because it's going to take time to learn it and understand how they're using that terrain. But also, there's the shortening of learning curve because I've hunted areas similar to that in the past, and I can start, shortcutting my scouting as far as like, okay, this looks like it's pretty good when I'm looking on the map. Like maybe I can check out this spot, and you start seeing trends there that definitely help. But there's definitely no shortcut for time in an area, in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of those areas are just it takes a few years, and you can't be afraid to fall down that handrail, and bust your teeth up, bust your knee up.
Yeah. And so now, speaking of new areas, then you moved out to Montana, and explain kind of your thought process there and why you wanted to move to Montana, and why would you want to move to a, shitty state like Montana?
Well, first of all, it's probably not the brightest decision I've ever made. I probably could have chosen, I don't know, somewhere warm, tropical, done some fly fishing, something like that. No. So again, like growing up, being in PA, uh, when I was like a freshman, when everybody started doing the whole entire, hangout thing on Friday nights and everything, and, everybody got together, and, they did, whatever. Um, a buddy of mine, we wouldn't go to these parties. We would actually like go to a place called Video Circus, which is like a Blockbuster, and we would rent, Eastman Journal, like the VHS tapes, and that's what we would do on our Friday nights. And then like Saturday morning, his father would drive us like an hour and a half up to Schrader Creek, drop us off, drive all the way back, work all day long, and then drive all the way back up and pick us up. He would drop us off at one end of the creek, and we would just walk the whole entire creek up and just fish it all day long. So like the hunting and fishing, that was like all of our life. But watching those Eastman journals, the elk hunting, just a screaming, what are they, a bugling camel, or I've heard tons of different sayings for it, but
Yeah.
never gotten to see that. Just always been intrigued by it, and then for some reason, just always got drawn to Montana. You know, just the landscape and everything about it throughout those videos. So yeah, I think it was like Thanksgiving of 2018. Uh, Something had gotten into me, or I'd listened to something, like chase your dreams, go for goals, and I always remembered. I remember I wanted to to leave this area and go to Montana when I was younger. I'm like, I don't have anything really holding me back. I don't have a wife or kids. My immediate family, my mother, my father, and my cousins, they're all back there. But I'm like, this is my life. Like this is something. Why don't I? So that was like that Thanksgiving. I told them that's what I was interested in doing and thinking about it. And, both parents were like, yeah, you should, go for it. And why not? You can always go home, right? So January 11th of 2019, a couple of weeks later, I was in Montana and trained to hunt. I actually split an apartment with a guy from Train to Hunt, who was in Wisconsin, who we had never met before. We had just known each other through the Train to Hunt Facebook page. And, I had posted something about moving to Montana. And he's like, I'm actually thinking about doing the same thing. So, yeah, we've never met before. We ended up being roommates for 2 years. I hear he did the same thing, picked up and, moved, left Wisconsin, came out here. Yeah, and I'd obviously, I wish I'd have done it sooner, but no better time than now. So,
Yeah.
I got out here in 2019, and I don't think I'll ever come back. I tell my my parents, obviously I'm the only child, so they're their first priority when it comes down to it. If they need help, whatever, I will I will pick up and leave for them. But making it my permanent spot is Montana. I'll probably like I said, I'll probably never ever go back there to live permanently.
Yeah.
So.
That I think that's so cool, and it just shows, like, I mean, you went through a bunch of phases of your life, and believe it or not, like I told you this, like I never knew you were you were over 40 years old. I'm not trying to say you're old or anything, Tim, but like
Yeah.
I thought you looked younger and everything, but just like it just shows, like, at any point you decide you want to do something, you can just go do it. And like your dedication to perfecting your craft in archery and hunting is admirable, and I've been able to see it and see you get better and learn, and your goals of, like, especially this last year, like you were like, I want to be 100% as far as every time I pull the bow back and an arrow goes, something's dying, like.
Mm-hmm.
And like you've your work right now, we were talking before you record, and you're doing winter leagues, and you're shooting in competitions and doing all these things, working year round at it to be better. And we got to hunt this year in Montana, and bear season we didn't actually hunt together, but we shared camp. And then elk season we got to hunt together, and I got to be behind you when you shot your first bull, which will be on the film coming out here shortly. So that was super cool.
And I do have to say this too. So we did just do our apps are out right now, so we can apply for our units. And when I was debating on what units to apply for, uh, obviously where we were was a very game rich environment, and I got to thinking, I'm like, you know what, like I don't have that sweet calling cow caller bow coming out here this year. So I'm pretty much like batting 1,000 now. So I'm just not gonna go there this year because I don't have any chance. Well,
Yeah.
the sweet muse of Bo.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. I yeah. No, I it definitely wasn't me on that, but that was so cool because I felt like you and I had never hunted together, but we meshed on, like, I felt like we were a good mix. Maybe you think differently, but I thought like we played off each other well, and like we respected each other. We each had our own like thoughts on doing things and everything, and we respected each other's thoughts and trusted each other, and it just worked well. I think it did work well.
Yeah, it worked really well. I mean, it was kind of like one, it was recognizing the situation, and it was immediate. What do you think? What do you think? Yes, yes. Like, well, maybe this, and it was kind of like, I trust your judgment on that one. Yeah, that sounds a little bit better, or it makes more sense. Or I didn't even think about that. So it was like the bull, the bull that I ended up shooting. I remember when it bugled, I was kind of like, just that the instant, the whole entire, I'm on public land. There's a million hunters around here. Everybody heard it. We need to make a move now. And you're like, no, let's slip up and around. Let's take our time. Let's not screw this up. And if it wasn't for you saying that, I probably would have just blown up the side of that mountain, and I probably, I would have screwed it all up. But we made that move up and around, and we made a game plan at every time. Every time some nuance or something else changed, we would stop and talk it over.
Yep.
And like our direction of travel changed 3 or 4 times. And like our thought of where he was changed 3 or 4 times. And it all it worked out towards the end.
Well, and what's crazy about that was, so and there can be, when you're with a hunting partner, there's two ways. Like, being able to talk through situations can be good and bad. If no one can make a decision or trust the other one on their, like, if they feel strongly about something, like, I've been in situations where it's like, you can't make a decision because nobody, like, you're just like, well, yeah, we go back and forth, where you and I were like, we talked through something, and if I felt really strongly about something, you trusted my judgment. If you said something, I'm like, oh man, I didn't think of that. Then we trusted your judgment, and we just made those moves as we went. And I felt like to have good, when you find good hunting partners like that, which is rare, but like to be able to mesh and go through it. And it's because we had our own unique experiences and thoughts on those things. But like, yeah, that you couldn't draw up a better, like, that working out. We're down there. I think we're probably like laughing or joking around about something. And
I got done. I think I just did a dry shot of mountain ops or something stupid like that.
I actually just watched the raw footage of that.
Oh my God.
I have it on my phone, and it was too dark on my phone. I got to see if Justin has it in the raw, if he videoed it on his camera, but I was cracked. Yeah, it was like dark out basically in the morning, and you're like doing a shot of mountain ops and dry, and you're like coughing, and we were joking around, and yeah, I think I did a cow call, or you did, or something, and that bull bugled, and it's like, holy cow. And then it was like, okay, what do we do? And then we had to actually go up back by camp, and like we circled way around. Like, it would have been a lot shorter to go straight at them, but that didn't, that wasn't the plan that we thought would work. And then we waited for the thermals to switch, which that was a process of where we sat in that spot before we made a sound for quite a while. And then the funniest part was when you and Justin are setting up, and I'm watching you guys, and all of a sudden a bull walks past me at 40 yards and is going right to, I'm like, and I still don't know to this day whether that was the bull you shot or not, or if it was a different one. I think there was a couple of them that were hanging
Yeah.
out in that bedding area, and he just walks through. And I'm watching the bull walking parallel to you, and you guys are probably only 40 yards apart at that point too. And I don't think the bull ever saw you, and you never saw it. It was thick as hell in there. And but yeah, that was so much fun to get to do that.
My focus is all about getting that one branch out of the shooting lane. I wasn't paying attention to anything. I was like sneak, snap, sneak back. No idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, that's good though. I guess I was super quiet, so that bull never saw me. So
yeah,
the stealth mode was
definitely.
on.
So yeah, everyone will get to see that coming up in the film when that gets done. We're in the middle of editing that. I'm not sure when I'm going to release it yet. It's probably going to be later in the spring or maybe even beginning of summer before I release that, when everyone's all pumped up for elk hunting. But going back to, like, you know, you're moving out there and kind of chasing some of these goals. I mean, you still didn't let your whitetail bug go away. Like, you've been chasing whitetails pretty hard and been successful out in there, Montana. What has that been like in a completely different landscape?
Yeah, so I've been out here for 4 years and I haven't chased a mule deer yet. I'm going after them this year. My buddy Dylan, he's coming out, and I'm actually gonna pick up a rifle, and I'm gonna use a rifle. I'm gonna rifle hunt with him. I probably am still gonna take my bow, honestly. But yeah, the whitetail has pretty much phenomenal. We might not have the class, you know. Like, I tell a lot of people, like, why would you skip over Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota to pay the prices of Montana? But in these pockets, the deer density is so high, it's phenomenal. So it was my second year here. I had a sit that I had 19 bucks come through in one sit. And that was from a sun up to sundown. It was just all day long cruising. Being from the Northeast, I've never seen that in my life. 1-2 deer in a day, maybe. 19 deer in one day, and they're pretty much all different bucks. It was, crazy, but it's been a learning curve, coming from a primary food source, October, which I haven't really done a lot of October hunting. Pretty much everything has always been elk up until, rifle season. And then, I found that most people out here, they love their rifles. They love that open country, and they don't get down in these river bottoms. So that's where I've been doing a lot of the hunting in the river bottoms, and I haven't really seen very many hunters down in these river bottoms. And I've been able to bow hunt actually. So every year, one year, I end up hitting a buck, but every year I've harvested a whitetail in rifle season with a bow. It's just I've found that you can still do it. It's definitely doable without any really major concerns. I've seen a couple of deer drives come through, and then immediately after, deer are filtering out. Like, even the deer drives out here, they walk in the open. They don't get like back east.
Busting brush.
Yeah, busting brush and hooting and hollering. I haven't seen that yet. But pretty much everybody's walking the open areas, and the deer just obviously are just holding tight, laying there. And people walk right by, people are coming right back by, and but yeah, it's I absolutely love it out here as far as the whitetail hunting is concerned. I haven't really scouted much. The shed hunting has been phenomenal. I went from 6 years of shed hunting in New York and PA and having like 2 or 3 sheds, and now I get upset if I don't find 2 or 3 sheds in a one outing, on a piece of public. And it's just the deer are different. The whole entire they're a little bit more, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, they're a little more, they do more what deer do. are supposed to do. They don't really rely on a lot of ag in some of these areas I go to. There's some of these areas, there's not, ag real close. They hang out in the brush. They eat a lot of browse, and there's not a hard mass. There's no oaks out here, so they're just a little bit more. I guess you'd say
primitive, or like, yeah, just like, yeah, deer in their natural habitat, just kind of
yeah,
like no influence on that.
yeah. It's just yeah, it's been awesome. Uh, yeah, I don't think first year out here. See, let me think here. Let me recall. So first year, opening day of elk. Opening day of elk, I missed an elk, and then last day of archery season, I hit an elk, and then yeah, it was rifle season. I think it might have been first or second day of rifle season. Um, I arrowed a good buck. I was on the ground, just still hunting basically. I saw does come through, and it's end of October. I stepped up a little bit to where those does came through, and sure as shit, that buck came, coming through the Russian olives, and I think I smoked that thing at like 10 or 15 yards. The following year, that's when Greg came out. We had a decent elk season that year. I got pretty close into a big bull, and then so that was the year I missed the 7x5, or I guess
12 point.
12 point. Yeah. Yeah. I was just gonna say. I mean, yeah. So I guess I should start saying 12 point. I guess most listeners are probably from the East Coast, so
Yeah.
not to confuse them. But yeah, it was a 7x5, and yeah, it was just one of those stupid mistakes. I had a spot hog double up. You used to use one, right?
Yep.
So my 20-yard pin, and I had it set for a 20 and 40, and this deer came out following does, and that doe came out at 40 yards. I'm like, he's gonna follow her. So instead of using that second pin, like a dumbass, I rolled the pin down to 20 or to 40. So my top pin is now 40. That buck hit the tree. I drew back, and he immediately veered right to me. So he came to like 16 yards. I had my pin at 40, and I tried to make the adjustment. I've always practiced the holdovers, using the 20, I'll hold over for 30. I never practiced the opposite.
Backwards, yeah.
And I whipped on that thing. But that was probably that was the largest whitetail that I've ever taken a shot at. Again, during gun season, not a lot of scouting in the area, more or less just kind of like transition line. So I've also learned a lot through. So you're familiar with Lucas Seiko.
Yep.
Through him, and then another buddy that you met, Dustin. So don't really hunt with them a lot. I've hunted with Lucas 1 year, but we're in a Snapchat group, and I take a lot. Kind of going back to how we were talking about how we kind of watch videos of people and like more or less trying to learn from what they're doing rather than that entertainment aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you met Dustin, so there's entertainment aspect in that one.
Yeah.
But I started to really pick up on what areas they're focusing in on, or similar areas, in the river bottoms. So I started making those adjustments. I'm like, this looks like something those guys would hunt, and it also has some sign. So I started doing that, and the sightings have picked up, the age has picked up. So there's that year. The following year.
Well, hold on. I want to dive into that a little bit. So like when you're talking about like when you're saying like the edges, are you talking about like different transitions in vegetation at that point, or what were you kind of finding is that type of sign there?
You're not necessarily like your hard edges, but more like your vegetation differences. Either your red brush or your willows, and your willows next to Russian olives or to a cottonwood strip. A lot of cottonwood strips are wide open, and this red brush gives them something easily, or your willows they hop into, and they disappear like that. But just those edges, and I just started focusing on those type of edges more. And then there's actually, I don't know what you want to call them. but you can have like an island and it'll be all red brush except for centers. Sometimes the centers, I guess, just from the amount of water that pools up there every year, just doesn't allow anything to grow. But it'll leave these big open little nooks. You can't really hunt. There's no trees. You have to be on the ground. But I think that gives them enough security where they stay in it, but they still have to cross these openings. And that's something I've seen, those guys would do, is they set up on the ground. They're not afraid to set up on the ground. They don't need to be in the tree. I guess the other big learning curve too is our wind out here is a little bit more consistent than something like back of the hills, back home. If you have a 10-mile-per-hour wind out of the west, it's pretty much 10 miles per hour. The west, of course. A lot of times there's cliffs if you're on the river. So obviously there's kickback and stuff like that. You got to still pay attention to, but you can pretty much guarantee your wind is going to be whatever it says it's going to be doing, or once you leave the vehicle. So that's been a huge help, I guess you'd say. Like you don't have to really worry about it. Now you have to worry about it, but you can be more dependable on it. I know, back home, like we're saying, learning from mistakes. You're like, oh, I should be good here. The minute you're up in the tree, all of a sudden, boom, the back of your neck. You're like, son of a bitch. Like the wind hits you, and you just, you lose confidence. And with that kind of wind out here, the more flat terrain and stuff, it just stays pretty much in your face, or however you want to play it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And also, like, what do you find? Like, what do you find those deer bedding at when you're out there? I know, like, when you were talking about, you were a big hunting beast forum guy, and that back then, do you still use some of those tactics when you're doing this hunting, like trying to find out where they're bedding, or you focusing more on travel routes, like with the late October, November timeframe?
It's more or less travel routes. A lot of these bottoms are really open, and they, a lot of the bedding that you'll see, especially, mainly shed hunting is when I'm primarily into these areas. They're on the very edges of, these thickets. They're not actually in the thicket. They're on these edges, or they're just inside it, and you're not getting close. Some of those areas though, like those cottonwood bottoms, might have tall enough grass, or there might be from years ago, the flooding might cause a little slough where you're down in. You can get close, but yeah, as far as trying to getting super close to where they could be possibly bedding, I don't think it's a good idea. It's more or less the travel, and plus, deer are on their feet 24/7 here. It's crazy. Like, driving, from work at 2:00 in the afternoon or going something. There's 20, 30 deer out in the middle of a field just feeding. and like your early season, yes, it's warm, but like you still see deer hitting the fields an hour early, 2 hours early. It's again, getting back to like deer behaving more like deer should behave. I think it's just because they don't get the pressure other than that rifle season. You don't really have a lot of people that are diehard whitetail hunters out here. So I feel like that archery season, they're pretty much still doing their thing. And I haven't done it yet, but I think you could probably easily get away with hunting the morning. Of course, I guess it depends on the deer. Obviously your age class. I think an old buck is an old buck no matter where you are.
Yeah.
But
no, that makes sense. It's hard though, like it's hard to want to hunt that early season because you're focused on elk at that time.
Oh yeah.
And that's the so what you got to do is you just got to shoot an elk early, and then you can go focus on the deer.
You screw that one up for this upcoming year, so I won't be shooting an elk early. Yeah. 2023 will be a struggle for elk all year long.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean, for the price of the tag, I think, if you wanted to do it, if you wanted to experience Montana, if you wanted to see Montana for the first time, or, maybe have a future elk plan, or whatever, or you want to go after mule deer, a mule deer or a deer tag coming out would probably be a good first step to coming out here to get to lay the land. Maybe you're thinking you'll stay in this town and then, come to find out there's nowhere to stay or whatever. I think doing a deer tag would be a good, starter for people to get out. And I think I think you'll, most people will be blown away because you will see deer, and it's just, you're going to see 15, 20 deer in a sit, throughout the evening, especially if you're like into, some type of opening, and especially if you hit one of those pockets. Some of these pockets are so dense with deer, it's just like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I love hearing those
I
stories.
kind of hate saying it though. I don't want to hype it up. I think South Dakota or Kansas are definitely your better options. So
Yeah.
or Wyoming.
No, I get you, but it's pretty cool that they live in a whole bunch of different places in Montana too, which they do in Wyoming and some of the other western states.
The strangest areas I think I've seen are like your northeast corner. Dude, there's no cover. Like
Yeah.
they're literally, living in coulees and they're hitting ag fields up there. Like they're in the middle of coulees, like and it's something that we're so used to. Like those deer, as soon as that sun comes up, they're in that cover. Out here they're literally in the middle of a prairie. It's just kind of I guess you'd say like your South Dakotas and your Badlands. Like they don't necessarily need that cover, or they don't seek it, I guess. But yeah, that you can go from there to river bottoms to more mule deer country to the mountains. Like Troy Pottinger, like what he hunts, and I continue to see. I always watch those brag boards, and the size of some of the deer that come out of when these guys are taking photos of them, they're in the mountains. They're covered in ponderosa pines. They're in the background, or you can tell the steep angle. The size of the deer that come out of those mountains, like you just know that they get big and old up in there. There might be less, but they're just getting older up there. I think just because they're not in that open country, and that's the other thing that I kind of just your brother and I had this conversation. I don't agree with them having a rifle season through the rut, especially during the river bottoms and your northeast corner, because the deer let their guard down, and you have kids making 400-yard shots, which a kid I don't care. If the kid is is proficient, let him hunt through the rifle season. I don't care about that. I think if that gets a kid out there, then good. But some of these guys are proficient at 600 yards, and it's not quite fair to like the the whitetails or the mule deer, when their guard is down to where they're not even they don't even have a guard. But the Montana is an opportunity state over the trophy, which I agree to disagree, and I don't care enough to really bitch and moan about it.
Yeah, no,
it's more of an opinion.
Yeah, no, I can understand both sides of that from the opportunity standpoint, and like the rifle hunt gives people an opportunity to go out and do that, and still be able to come home with something that, and they're especially people that aren't coming from out of state on their first Western trip, and be able to get that, and then but it also it does hurt. It definitely hurts the quality because they're getting whacked when they're at their most vulnerable position, especially in the open country. That's the nature of it for sure. So what do you have, like last year you had a really successful season, and we're not going to dive into each and every one of those hunts, but what are your goals kind of going forward here? What are you looking to do and improve on, and then like kind of just your hunting goals?
So last year, I know when we had hunted, I had said that I'd want to go, I want to go 100% every time I draw the bow back. If I release it, I wanted to, I wanted to hit its mark or where I wanted to. That was kind of the goal going into the season. And I had a good season last year. I went 7 for 8. The one I missed on, that was just I rattled in a small buck. I just misjudged the yardage, and I hit some brush, and I nicked the thing. That was my only miss. Every other one, was a successful shot. The bull, I just misread the body on him, and it just wasn't. We weren't able to recover him in time, but as far as my, my shot execution and the shot, I couldn't have been happier, especially for, that moment. Um, go going forward is to do the same things, to go 100% on it. Um, and I think last year, uh, I accidentally did it. So have you done anything with Joe Turner Shot IQ?
Yeah, I have. Yep.
So how he talks about making a conscious decision to make that proper shot. He talks about, pull, don't, freak out. I kind of did that on my own without doing the whole entire thing. So the antelope that I shot was the first, actually was the second and third animal I shot that year. And I got drawn back and I did not feel comfortable. So I said I was not going to do it. Now he talks about, don't let the bow down. Now, work yourself through it. And that I still don't know if I would do that on an animal. On a target, I might do, I might try to work myself through it. But I had set the bow down and she still stood there. And so I kind of set my feet again and I took a deep breath and I drew back and I was able to execute, the shot properly. Being able to be drawn back and having those jitters at first and then setting down just reset my mind. So I was able to come back to full draw and I was just 100% in the moment, focused on, where I wanted to hit and the shot execution. That was a 78-yard shot. And, I'd absolutely smoked her. The bull was the second animal that I got drawn back on. When he first came through, I got drawn back, couldn't get a clear shot. I was rattled at that point in time. I know I was. And I set the bow down, and of course we had a few moments to, to wait until another shot. So I had time to refocus myself, like double check, what's that distance? I didn't range, but I'm like looking at trees, making the best judgment, making sure I know what pin to go with, waiting for that moment, where do I have that shot opportunity? Just that little sliver is all I have. So as soon as he hits that, I have to be ready to go. And, as soon as that, moment started to approach, I got drawn back and I was 100% confident. And, within the moment, I was present. And it was literally, as soon as that stopped, it was in between those trees. It was just pull. It's just everything what Joe Turner talks about. Except I was doing this before, I found it. And that now I accidentally, did what he's teaching. And, so anyways, after that bull was two does. Both does were the same thing, 100% in the moment. I was actually working through the trigger, and the doe had turned quarterly. I backed my thumb off, held it. She turned back, and that's why I got myself back through it. Never had to set the bow down. Both does like that. And then the buck I shot, that was at 15 yards. Got drawn back. While I was drawn back, I was never anchored. I was drawn back, kind of more or less just off to the side, watching him, seeing which way he was going to veer on which trail. And as soon as he hit that one trail, I knew exactly where I was going to go, knew the yardage. Pin was back. As soon as he stepped in that lane, I was giving the good old stopped him. And some of my best shots in archery or in target, I don't even see the pin. You don't really, the focus on the pin isn't there. You're just so laser focused on that target. Like, I don't remember seeing the pin on that deer. I just remember staring at that front shoulder, and that arrow, it went off and it hit directly through there, blew right through the shoulder, through the heart. And, it was just, that was all, accidentally taught myself, that whole entire shooting sequences. And then, so going forward, I want to continue that. And that's the reason why I got into the target archery is, I had a really great year. And I wanted to continue to have pressured shot opportunities. Well, I mean, so target shooting, you can shoot out back all you want, but you don't really put that added pressure on you. Now going into a league, shooting these tournaments, you mess up one time, you go from a 10 to an 8 you're pretty much out of the running, against everybody else, and it's just more or less, staying consistent through 30 shots, 45 shots, 60 shots, you know, you know, to do something like, shoot a 60X, you're shooting a penny 60 times with your bow hunting setup, at 20 yards. And, people are like, I was like this too at first. I'm like, it's just 20 yards, like, how good can that, practice really be? But you really start to realize your flaws. And I started doing that Joe Turner course. And yeah, so my focus has changed, my talk has changed. And it's been more like now it's, whatever game it is, it's every single shot counts. And it's, as soon as you're done, you have to have that. If you have a bad shot, you have to forget about it. You cannot be like, damn it, I'm out of the running. Just get right back into it, stay focused, and just, execute your next shot. And, I've been doing fairly decent. And of course, shooting with better people has really helped, step up my game. And it's just me, me versus me. And it's just something that I personally strive for. I'm striving to be the best possible, archer I can be. I work hard for my opportunities, in the field. I don't always have a lot of time. I don't get paid vacation. So a lot of times, I'm taking my vacation days, it's on my own dime. I'm losing money, to be out there, which I can always make money. I can't get that time back, but I want to make sure I capitalize on those situations. So that's why I'm kind of, striving, to be a better and better archer. And the hunting is learning, the physical aspect of it, you can do that year round, but to get that, that pressured shot, you only have hunting season really. So jumping into target, that's where I've seen that's taken me, to be a lot better.
No, I think that's awesome. And I know me personally where I've struggled in the last few years is when I'm at full draw and the animal's there and it makes a move and I don't see it. Like I'm seeing it, but it's not registering in my head. Like I've had that in West Virginia where I hit a buck a couple years ago where he was slightly quartered to, and by the time my shot went off, he was hard quartering to, almost straight on, and I didn't even notice it. But when you watch the video, it's like he obviously did that in a very split second of time. But if I would have been in full control, I would have been able to see that happening. And I think I've made big strides, and I think that's a good thing to reflect on as far as like the shots I've made, they feel good when they go off, but I need to get better in being able to analyze those things as they're happening, as I'm going through it and being present and seeing that as well as going through my shot process. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the big things that I'm working on and trying to get better at, because I've had a couple mishaps because of that. And it's just, yeah, same thing with the brush, like with the elk hunt. I've talked about it on here before, but when, I hit branches on the one bull that I completely missed and the others, that's just like in my practice of understanding the arc of my arrow better and being able to see it. That bull that I hit, the Marlboro man, when he, that was
rest in peace, I think.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you sent me a photo that he might have been killed in rifle season, but when he came in, like looking back after that shot, I couldn't have got an arrow through there cleanly. But in that moment, I was looking through peep sight, housing, looked good, but everything around there was not good, and like where your arrow's actually flying, and it's just like, man, like it sounds so easy for me to reflect on and see that, but it's like I need to get better in those moments of being able to recognize that even before I pull the bow back and being able, even when you're running and gunning and stuff, like I can make as many excuses as I want, but that's not going to help me put a bull down. So like that's where that I need to improve on. And so that's something that like me personally that I'm working on, because I've learned that through the years, whether it's whitetail hunting or elk hunting and stuff, the other things, it is very hard to get those opportunities. But like I feel like not to say I'm good at doing it, but the other things kind of in line, and I'm working and putting steps for that, and I'm being able to get opportunities now that I might not have been able to have in the past. Now it's like it comes down to those very few opportunities. I need to be able to execute on that, and it needs to be automatic that when that buck is there and he's there at whatever distance in my shooting range, that I need to know that he's dead when I draw that bow back. And that's my biggest thing for this coming year of getting better at. And like right now, it's like when I'm home daily in the basement, even though it's 17 yards I can shoot across my basement, I'm just putting arrows. Sometimes it might be 2 arrows in a day, sometimes it might be 30, but it's just like I'm going through that and practicing executing the shots and going back to the basics on doing it, and making sure every arrow, there's no arrow that's less important than the other. It's just making sure everyone's good, because I've been in the habit of mindlessly shooting. And you know what that's like you just go out and you just start shooting the target and you're just like, just doing it.
You're going through the steps. You're going through the motions. Nothing. You're not really putting a lot of value into everything.
No, it's not intentional. And I'd rather shoot 3 arrows that are all intentional than shoot 30 that are going through the motions. And it's taken a long time for me to learn that, and it's still not that just because I know it that it's going to happen. Like I need to make that decision every time, and that's something that I did learn from Joel, is like making that conscious decision every time that this is going to be a perfect shot and there's no exceptions for it.
Yep. Yeah, that was kind of like the mind frame coming into, last season is I wanted to make a perfect shot. I wanted to go, 100% all the way across the board. And then, what Joe's teaching just kind of reinforces that my mind was on the right track from the beginning. So now I'm just getting, the proper coaching, I guess you'd say. And, more or less, it's just good to know that where I want to go is exactly the right route I'm taking.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that, and I think this is a good time of year to focus on it. Not in the summer. It's like start now and build those habits and build those conscious decisions, because that's when it pays dividends. When you're doing it over and over again, it just becomes natural for you to do it.
And back to your the brush situation. A lot of times that stuff happens so quickly. You can see lanes that aren't really there, if that makes sense. Like oh yeah, I can get through, but then afterwards you're like, oh, I never saw that branch. That's just something. Do you think a person can really learn to a lot of times like at that moment there is that one branch, and you can be in a tree all day long looking at that one stretch of land or trees, and think you can make it through there, or like you could look at that same stretch 30 times and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, you know what? There's that one little branch right there. I never saw that. It's just kind of like, I don't know. Do you think like I don't know if you can really learn it, but like I think that's just something that it comes with the territory. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that, but I guess my thought process on it is like there's probably going to be times when that happens again and it goes through it, but I don't want to leave it to chance. As far as I want to try to consciously put myself in that moment and be more aware of those things. Now, is there going to be exceptions? 100%, but if I can like really just like focus on it and try to like bring my emotions and nerves down enough to have a little bit of a clearer picture, that might help me get one more successful opportunity versus not having that. That's, I guess, the way I'm looking at it. It's just like trying to analyze that stuff a little bit better if I can, even if it increases my chances by 3%. That's better, you know?
Right.
And that's how I'm looking at it.
It's almost like that needs to be incorporated into like a person's shot process.
Yeah.
Okay, here comes that animal. I'm gonna take this animal, double check everything first. You know, double check everything first. What's the yardage? Where can I get drawn back, anchored, set, watch it to keep it, pull, when that opportunity is. So it's almost like, yeah, you know, make that into like I guess that'd be really hard to practice, but into like your routine, or you're saying, like even if you're
No.
out back, just before you even draw back, maybe look, put your head up and just look both sides or something, and
No, that's a very actionable step because it's easy to say you're going to learn something, but if you don't have actions that can,
right.
put towards it, then you're not really doing much. But no, I agree. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, do you have anything else you want to leave anybody with here before we kind of end this here? It's getting a little bit late, and I'm my old age, I'm getting ready for that.
Tony, yeah, I guess it is kind of close to my bedtime. Oh, what was? I don't really remember. No, I was kind of looking. Oh, I was gonna say, um, kind of going into our 2023 seasons here. You're not coming to Montana this year. You're going elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I'll be heading to Alaska, so there won't be, at least as of right now, any like lower 48 western trips planned. Are you planning on sticking around in Montana and focusing on that?
Yeah. So we just did the applications. And I applied for, obviously the elk. I have a buddy coming out for a mule deer, so I won't be hunting whitetail here, but I do plan on going to North Dakota over Thanksgiving to get my whitetail fixed. And then I actually applied for the ewe tag for a bighorn sheep ewe. Um, I'm at like a 98% chance of drawing in this unit. So
Wow.
I kind of 0 points. You can still draw a bighorn ram tag, and the amount of points that I have is like 0.03 chance. Like even at like 19 points, you're just at a whole number. Like you're at like 1.5 with 19 points. So I'm not really burning a lot of points. And I figured, you know what, this is an opportunity to just go hunt them. If it's not this year, it'll be next year. It is a new tag, but I can still, if I ever do draw that, at least I can say I had a season hunting them. Even just the species and the area. So yeah, that's pretty much it for I'll be in Montana, other than North Dakota. But next year's the whitetail year. I have 7 points for Iowa. I'm gonna go see Curtis with Behind the Bow. I don't know if we'll hunt together or anything like that, but we'll probably share the same camp, same areas. But and I also was just notified that I've been sitting on 2 points in Kansas, and I need to either purchase another point or use it. So I'm going to purchase another point. So 2024, right now, the tentative goal is to take like a 2.5 week trip, do a week in Iowa, and then do a week in Kansas. And then
Nice.
I'll probably actually hunt whitetail in Montana. So
There you go. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That sounds like a dream season there. That's for sure. I'll probably be in Iowa. I might be in Iowa in 2024 as well. I'll have enough points. I just haven't. I have enough points. I could probably hunt it this year, but I got other plans that I want to focus on. So
right. Yep.
oh,
Yep.
that's awesome.
Well, that's about it. Other than appreciate finally getting a chance to sit down and talk, and seeing that I'm going to rag on you again for not, we're not going to be able to do it again this year, but
Yeah. Hey, you never know. You never know. Something might change, and you might find me out there, and we'll be hunting together. You never know. But no,
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time and coming on and talking here. Is there any place you'd want to direct anybody to follow along with your stuff and what you're doing, or anything along those lines?
My OnlyFans page. Just kidding. I don't have an OnlyFans. I mean, yeah, I guess just my Instagram. That's pretty much my primary, use of social media.
Yeah, cool.
I'm more or less, and I've really kind of taken a backseat on posting anything anymore. I used to post a lot. Now I'm more or less just a scroller, a scroller and a smart ass. I like to comment on people's, posts, but that's about it. But yeah, I guess just my, Instagram page. If anybody wants to follow along on the adventures, I am an idiot. I I also I try to keep it real. I do post a lot of my mess ups. A lot of people you look at their Instagrams and it's nothing but success or nothing but good fortune and everything. And I'm not like that. I have a lot of I used to ride for a BMX company called Shit Luck, and that cloud has followed me ever since. So I post a lot of more mess ups than anything else. But yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes here. But again, thanks so much, Tim, for coming on. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.